I'm going to present like some idea. But first of all, I would like to say thanks to Nacho because he just joined us like 1 month ago, but he's now officially also our advisor or supervisor. So a big thanks to him because now he's in Universidad do Minho. He's not in Spain and he didn't have holidays to be there. So he's making a very huge effort to be here with us. So really thanks a lot that you can share these days with us. Now I'm going to talk about my ideas about my PhD, what we have done in our university, and like the first ideas about the first and second paper. So here is the outline. First of all, I'm going to say just some words about my previous research that I think that we are also going to work in future. And then I'm going to present the literature review and some ideas about the first paper. So during my master's research, I've done this project with two economists, Jaime Ortega and Manuel Vagues. And it's about how you can measure human effects inside a firm. Among economists, there are some problems sometimes when you try to measure these new techniques. You do a cross-section analysis, so you don't check just one firm, and what they are trying to verify and to see is just inside one firm how this new practice in human resources change productivity. And I have done this literature review at my previous university, and thanks to some Nacho's ideas, we already sent this paper to the Journal of Economic Survey, and we are waiting for an answer. I think that maybe in the future we are trying to have some data at Citroën, that is a car industry and is placed in Vigo, that is my current city. So to do an analysis about all this. I don't know if I have the time to explain this, but in the future, maybe in another presentation in January, I would like to explain more about this because maybe any of you have some idea about how to find data just in one company, because we need like individual data and also time data to then to do a fixed effects model. So it's a bit difficult. So like now my project, in my first paper, we are going to discuss the literature in geopolarization and job growth. And I think that this is very crucial for not just for individuals, also for firms and for governments to see how the structure of employment is in any country. But with this kind of literature, there are two problems that I'm going to explain later. As I've already said, the structure of employment is important not just for economists, also for sociologists. And they are, since like the 18th century, there are a lot of information about how the job structure is in any country. And during the last decade, they start to talk about geopolarization. The first one that did a report about this was Stiglitz in United States, because during the 50s, United States were creating a lot of jobs, but the society started to think about if these jobs were good or bad, and how was the quality of these jobs. So Stiglitz did this first national report, and then he just compared 2 years. So their first results were that all the jobs that the United States were creating were very good, and that the society was creating good performance. But then Wright and Dewar, they analyzed like a 10 years period, and they discovered that the society was polarized. What I'm meaning when I'm saying that the society is polarized is like here. Okay. What we are trying to explain with this polarization theory is that if you have the jobs, and then you divide this. Okay, it's a bit difficult to explain to you how we do this, But if you take the quality of jobs and employment, you see that in the two tails, the bad ones and the best ones with skills and salary, you destroy they grow those kind of jobs, but the ones that are in the middle, that are in general the middle class, you destroy all those jobs. So the society more and more is kind of polarized, because the middle class, they are destroying all those jobs. And how we evaluate this? We use like a technique that is called the jobs approach. This is the technique that the Eurofund uses. So we use the ISCO and NACE to evaluate the occupation and the activity. And thanks to that, we analyze jobs, but not individuals. But we create a big matrix to see all these jobs. And then, once we have this big matrix that I will show you later, then we divide this matrix in 5 quintiles. So the first year, when you are going to analyze a period, all the quintiles are the same. And then you see how these quintiles change over time. And thanks to this, you can explore how the structure of employment changed in Europe, and in particularly in Spain and UK. So as I've already said, this is what we use. Like, we measure jobs, not individuals. And that the first ideas is like job quality. To measure job quality, we are going to use wages. And that we use as the labor force survey we take the data from the labor force survey. So here you have what I'm saying about the job matrix. You have all the occupations, all the activities, and then you mix the occupation one and the activity one, and you have the first job. And like this, you can have all the jobs that are in any society. From that job, we take the mean and the median wage, and then we divide this matrix in 5 quintiles. So we have this as a reference year. And then you study a period to see how this changed and to see how society changed. And what can we have? Upgrading, that it means, sorry, maybe here I didn't explain one thing. The first and the second one are the jobs that have the lower wage and the lower skills. The fourth and the fifth quintile are the ones that have the highest wage and the highest skills. Maybe I didn't explain this, that is important. So one example can be that the society is upgrading. That means that we are destroying the jobs that are in the lowest part, and that we are creating a lot of jobs in the highest part. We can have downgrading, that is the opposite. Or we can have polarization, that is what we are what more or less we have now in Europe and in US. That just the jobs in the lowest and in the highest are growing, but we are destroying all in the middle. And this has a lot of important consequences for society. Because if we are destroying the jobs that are in the middle, we are destroying also our middle class in Europe. And then it will be higher to jump from one quintile to the other, as you cannot go up and you cannot grow because there are no jobs in that part. So society is going to be anytime more and more polarized. That is what we are seeing now, that it's happening already in US. So what we are trying to focus in the first paper is to analyze all the geopolarization theory and all the literature review on this. And of course that this, as all, has some problems, because with this job approach, the reference period matters. And as we can see here, If you use to study the 1994-2008 period, if we use as a reference year the first one, we have the first solution. We obtain this. I'm using this data with the Spanish labor force survey, and it's real data. It's not like just some graphs. And if we use the 1977, that is the first year of the Spanish transition, we have this solution. So there are, like, this is one of the problems using this approach, that the period that you use as a first one it matters then for your results. We are going to avoid this, as we are going just to use the last period of the Spanish and UK data from the crisis. So we are not going to have those problems. Then another problem that we observe in the literature is that if, depending on the quantiles that you use, you also will have different results. Instead of, if you don't use quintiles and you use deciles, then you have different results. And for that, we still don't have an answer, Nacho, or I don't think that we have an answer. And of course, that another problem is that job quality, you just cannot measure job quality with wages. There are more things that are important to see this. And other problems with this literature is that you don't do regression, you just see what is happening. And then there is unclear if this is because there is globalization or there is technical change, or maybe it's because of labor market institutions. You cannot explain what is, you see that the society is polarized, but you cannot explain why that is happening, why we have such a problem, and what can we do to solve this. So these are the main problems that we observe with this literature. And then, so like my first paper will do a literature review about geopolarization, the problems that we see and how can we solve it. And then the second paper will be to do an analysis about Spain and UK. And here, so I didn't talk about mismatch, but here we are going to use that methodology, the one that I explained, the job approach, to measure if there is mismatch or not in UK and in Spain after the crisis. The problem was that, as you didn't know anything about our methodology, I was explaining how we are going to measure mismatch in our university thanks to this approach. And yes, and this is the data that we are going to use, the European Labor Force Survey 2008-2013. Sorry that there is a mistake there. And here I explain the breaks that are in the data because are important. And we already have all the Spanish data, and we already have the matrix for the Spanish data. We are having some problems with the UK data because the educational level is not the same one as in Spain and in Europe. So we need to find a method to change the educational level in UK and to transform that to European level. So we are working on that with Nacho, and that was what I have done until March, that I started in March. I don't know if you have any question, because this is like my presentation. I don't know if you understand something or not, sorry, because it's a bit difficult to explain this to different backgrounds and to different people that they are not economists, or maybe they are not they don't know anything about what polarized mean, or about how we measure, or about how we do like the job matrix. So if you have any question, I can explain it a bit more because I really don't know.
Okay, so questions?
To be very honest, this is the only topic I'm really familiar with for this week.
Okay,
sorry for that.
Thank you.
But maybe you can also keep in contact. I already give.
Yeah, also because of the previous part that I explained.
The interest, I think it's awfully interesting design which you made. The only problem which may arise, or there are many problems, like you tell, the UK educational system and registration is different. But let's say the problem is that take care, I would say, it's very paternalistic, sorry for that, take care a bit for too easy linking results at company enterprise level with societal level. For example, in a country like yours in Spain, but also in the UK, when you have large unemployment, a lot of people fall out from this registration of skills and occupations. And this may hamper, let's say, especially, which is a good thing,
Yeah.
You take the crisis period 2008-2014, you have the risk that your sample is a bit spoiled by unemployment, for example, and by unemployment spells. But there are some of these problems, but in general I would say you're quite right. It's like, especially from the UK, there is a big debate with David Alder and many others on, let's say, polarization and the societal effects. But to be very honest, take this up to the end of your project and be a bit careful about linking these different levels of research to.
You are completely right. First, about polarization, we have a huge debate always in our university and in our internal seminars talking about if society is polarizing or not, because there are some literature that they explain that, of course, but there are others that they say this is not it's not a problem of polarization, it's maybe a problem of the crisis, because of course during crisis the middle jobs are the ones that are going to be destroyed. Yeah. Because are the ones that you use machines, and of course those ones, or construction is always in the middle, and for example in Spain it's true that during the crisis that was the sector that suffered the most. And then there are, of course, like when we talk about Europe, you cannot say that every country is polarized. There are some countries that are more polarized than others. And yeah, about the UK problems, you're completely right. Nacho, I don't know if you have something to say.
Let's keep in touch with these problems, and we're working in the same direction. So.
No, you're completely right. Because in the case of Spain and other countries, in fact, even if the income distribution in the society is the result, even if you don't have unemployment, not only in the labor market, but also on the configuration of household, of redistribution, transfers of the government, and so, for example, Tony Atkinson is very critical with this approach because, and I think it's one of the reasons, I am an economist, but I think it's so popular among economists precisely because he thinks that the deterioration of income distribution is created from forces that are outside of our control. But of course, that other things that can correct even some trends in the labor market, or distributional transfer, taxes, and so on. So I completely agree with you that one thing is what is happening in occupational structure, and other things that can be completely different is what happens in the whole society.
But what we were saying with Nacho is that maybe we are going to take just like some occupations and then check doing regression how this change from the no. Well, we still don't have a lot of answers about this. Yes,
no,
Marianne?
It's the same for all the people who work in this field. So.
Yeah, you know, like there are like using this methodology, you have some advantages, but of course there are some disadvantages, and you need to recognize to your public when you talk the problems that we see.
Okay. Now, about the polarization, I was like wondering, because I think one of the most interesting hypotheses is the one by David Alder about the routinization of like, so that, you know, we have this sort of like, the middle skill jobs are like disappearing because they, you know, require like a lot of routine tasks, and then you have these very manual and very like intellectual jobs, and then they are like, you know, increasing because like less routine tasks. Like, do you like, I don't know, do you buy this hypothesis, or are you going to test for that?
Yeah, I think that in the future we are going to test for this hypothesis of Autor, and like from the I didn't explain this. Now we are going, this methodology is the one that they use in Eurofund, so we are going there to test if this is correct or not. And one of the parts that Eurofund and Kike are working is about this hypothesis. So I think that we are going to try to see if this is happening because of the routine task or not.
Okay.
Nacho, maybe you can explain more about because
I don't know.
I know that.
Some reflections about that is sometimes when people are trying to provide validity of this hypothesis, they start, for example, to exclude some sectors. They say, well, no, public employment is another different thing. Well, this construction is another different thing. These kind of services are another different thing. And this connects what you are saying. So at the end, you are having polarization, but in one part of manufacturing, if I define routing as a kind of very specific task, and so at the end, this is a personal view. This is so important, this polarization as a part of the labor market, because if at the end we are saying that some part of the manufacturing jobs are being destroyed because you are introducing machines, you are not saying nothing new apart from the Judiths was saying some centuries ago. So it's one of the things. But one of the things that they all found, and other people found, that it depends on the country sometimes. It depends on the country. For example, in the UK or in the US, I think the evidence supporting polarization based on the routine tax approach is much more stronger than in other countries. It's my perception of the literature. Then, and this is one of the things that Raquel is doing now, is trying to see why the different works differ, what happened, because sometimes, for example, the definition of if a job is or contains certain tax or routine or so is doing applying an American classification and transposing the American classification to the European ones. And so Raquel is trying to see to what extent the results are driving.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Like it's a really interesting point.
And then, like another problem that we saw in the literature is sometimes they exclude the welfare state. And I didn't present here the data, but we already have seen in Spain that, of course, that if, and in Europe, if you exclude the welfare state, you have a society that is more polarized than the real one. Because in Europe, we care about our welfare state, and there are a lot of people, like almost all of us, that we are working for the state. So if you exclude that part of society, you are going to have a society that will be more polarized. But I didn't present the data.
Because of the point of data that we are working on the dashboard, the data is the main thing for the dashboard. Do you have real data sources for your research, or you talk about real data to some extent?
No, the data that we are using here is the European Labour Force Survey.
So what's the plan for gathering some data for your research?
No, we are going to, like for the first paper, these ideas we are going to
No,
use.
I mean in the course of the next years. What's the plan for gathering the data? Because we like to know what are the available data in the consortium. So, and this is one of the topics that we have.
Well, regarding the paper that Raquel has just described, we have already the data, and we have been working with them. In the case of the Spanish Labour Force Survey, we have had to ask for an ad hoc extraction of the microdata because we didn't have the level of detail of the sector of activity, and we have to ask for a tailored version of the microdatabase. And in the case of the UK, we are using just the public microdata that are available in Archive UK. So we have already had the data. In some case, the Labour Force Survey, they are supposed to be confidential because the university have to apply for them. And in the case of the UK, they are completely public. Only one has to register in Archive Data UK and apply for this data. For this stage, we are not using the European Labour Force Survey because it doesn't have the level of segregation of sector of activity. Okay. And so we are using the national databases. And in order to compare the UK and Spain, Raquel is doing right now a work of harmonization.
But it's a must, like do harmonization among countries. Oh my God. Because then you see the papers and you just see like these graphs, but what is behind those graphs is like, wow.
Well, I think particularly when you make these harmonization tables between two data sets, that is typically something that could be posted on the dashboard.
Okay.
See, because that that's what others can use as well.
Of course, we can
So-
upload it of all the matrices and so on. This is
Yes.
completely feasible.
I have to cut it here.
Sorry.
Because
And even
But
the,
there are some
the files
persons.
are very small and everybody
We discussed
can
it more.